Hi, this is John Allen, the editor of Crux. Welcome to another video feature from Crux on our YouTube channel. Today, we are bringing you a conversation that is sponsored by the good people at the Catholic University of America and their Good Profits Conference, as well as the Bush School of Business and Economics and the Napa Institute. Now, this Good Profits Conference at the Catholic University of America is a really innovative effort to bring both Catholic thinkers in conversation with entrepreneurs and business people and financiers to try to figure out what a virtuous model of business activity informed by the best principles of Catholic social teaching would look like. And to discuss that with us today, we have the real expert in the field and one of the brightest and most articulate men in the Catholic Church. It's Cardinal Peter Turkson of Ghana, who is the head of the Vatican's dicastery for the promotion of integral human development. Prior to that, he was the president of the Pontifical Council for Peace and Justice, and someone who has thought deeply and widely, and I think importantly for Americans, also thought globally about these issues for a long time. Cardinal Turkson, thank you so much for making time for us at the end of what I know has been a very busy day for you.
Thanks to you. Thanks for the opportunity and occasion to share this with your listeners and audience.
So, Cardinal, tell us, from a certain point of view, you would think that the Catholic Church is in some ways hostile to the whole idea of profit. I mean, we talk about the importance of the poor and the importance of the peripheries and, taking care of the downtrodden. And some people think of that as a kind of anti-capitalist or anti-business message. But at this conference, you're actually trying to make the point that no, there is actually a virtuous, very positive form of business. So talk to us about that a little bit. What does good profit mean from a Catholic point of view?
Okay, thank you. To begin with, precisely the type of premise, to the question is just precisely why I came to be part of this. Because the impression given that, the church is, hostile, anti-business and all of that may have been the point of view of the past, but that's no more. Remember, for example, that in 2014, Pope Francis was invited to Davos, the World Economic Forum. He couldn't go, and I took his message and read it. And he calls business a very noble vocation, and invited business people to see themselves as co-creators, with God, in transforming everything that God had created to the concrete use of humanity. And several times that I've had the opportunity to talk about this, I've kind of sought to illustrate that in several very small ways. I mean, something like God created a tree. God did not create furniture. It takes business to convert trees to furniture. So in that sense, business continues. If God created a tree, it was for the use of humankind. But it takes business to transform this, if you want, there's a basic raw materials as it were of God creation into concrete. So really the tension between business and religion or faith and whatever, a little bit science is kind of artificial and a little bit overdone. I think all the concern about the role of business and capitalism and all of that emerges when you consider what people make out of business. In fact, the church's concern has always been to invite business people to see what they do in terms of a vocation, of a transcendental call. And when that happens, then the goal of business is not just what the business people have in their mind and they set themselves to doing. Then, so the thing is to invite business people to go out of this mode of they being all the meaning and the value and the goal of everything that they do, to recognize that what they do plays another role and plays a role in a bigger picture, which sometimes is not, seen by them. And that is ultimately within the larger society. And ultimately, if they have a chance to make the space, also in God's own plan for creation and for humanity. When that is done, then it rather invites to a dialogue and a conversation between business and the inspirations that the church from its own sources of revelation and scripture can also come up with us, which have been put together, codified in the church's social teaching, put together big global in the compendium of the social teaching of the church. So, my presence over here is to already, encourage a conversation that's already began and to contribute to it. Today we had a very, a very glamorous way of doing this conversation, because I spoke about good prophet, and after me was an interview with Charles Koch, and here in the United States everybody knows what Charles Koch means, but so if you want, today I met Charles Koch in a discussion of prophet, something that people would have thought impossible or whatever, almost blasphemous years back. But this is the type of conversation that we're encouraging. And if Pope John Paul II said years ago that we need to embark on new evangelization, and new evangelization in terms of zeal and method and all of that, that's what it means. We need to discover the methods of engaging the very many groups and sectors of society who hitherto have felt themselves out of the church, or who have no ear to the church's language and all of that. So I think that's all it's all about. Conversation, dialogue between partners who hitherto have considered themselves, not belonging together. But I think everybody belongs to, in God's plan, everybody fits.
So, Cardinal, let me ask you this. When you're trying to engage business people in this conversation, in this dialogue that you're talking about, what does the church bring to the table? Or to put the question differently, what do you think are the principles of Catholic social teaching that are most relevant, most useful, most applicable for the world of business?
Essentially is this: the humanity, the human race is one, ultimately, and we, the dignity of the human race or the human family is something that's equally shared. I mean, the common reference to members of the human family in terms of brotherhood is not for nothing. I mean, it's like, interestingly enough, like the Greek word for brother, adelphos, means we're from the same womb. And if all of us are from the same womb, then there's not one who shares more in dignity than another. Being from the same womb, we all share the same dignity. So if we were to recognize the basic dignity of all of us, undifferentiated, not diminishing one way and increasing another way, then the big thing before all of us is to ensure that all of us can live our common sense of dignity, because this is not something that somebody bestows on any other human person. Nobody, no government, no other institution on earth grants to another person dignity. It's something we're born with. It's something that's part of our nature. So the task we have is to encourage and to enhance the development of this for every person. Therefore, when we come to engage business, this is the point of departure. Business puts ideas into practice. Ideas which generate businesses, and business which transform very many elements of creation into something that humanity uses concretely for its life. In this sense, when we encourage business people to recognize that basically they're using something that's already there. Business transforms something that's already there. And already there means that you need to recognize that you're not ultimately the creator of all of these things. Somebody put it there and you transform it. And therefore, since you transform what is already there, it's good sometimes to recognize, if it's possible, the intentions of the one who put it there in the first place. And that's the invitation already now to business people to widen the scope beyond, shareholders, what they come to, what they contribute to, and the thing about profit and gain. But to recognize that if they are making use of something that somebody had already put there out of love, then it will be good in their processing of whatever is there to recognize that they are invited also to make this represent the basic love of God who put all of this at their disposal. So it will be the discovery of the common brotherhood of people, the universal sense of the dignity of all of us, and then the big principle of solidarity, communion, and sharing of the goods of the earth, so that everybody can, from what nature has put at our disposal, nourish, develop, and engender our own sense of dignities.
So, Cardinal, let me ask you the kind of like hard-nosed bottom line question that a business person probably would ask. Is it possible to do everything you just said? That is, to recognize the intrinsic dignity of all persons, to recognize that we ultimately are not the creators of the goods that we're using in our enterprise. To recognize that there is a kind of universal solidarity among all. Is it possible to do all of that and still make a profit?
Yes. And in fact, if one did all of that from the testimonies we listened to and heard this morning, in fact, if they did more of that, they experience more profit. Ironically, in actually doing all of this, because what is it? For example, if we encourage a business person to have such love and concern for his working staff, and create a channels for them to also express their views and whatever, it enriches by far the nature and the character of business. It's so enriching for workers and staff of a company to realize that they're not just there to put a nail or a hammer in place, but that their views are also taken on board. It makes them kind of develop a sense of co-ownership of the facility, and so work for it and contribute everything that they have to it. So indeed, when business entrepreneurs or business people try to realize some of these things, they have returns to gain, returns which, contrary to the thing that means you're going to be spending more and therefore your profit margins are going to reduce and all of that. That doesn't really quite happen. The contrary, the opposite rather is the case. We listened to a sharing this morning of one of the participants who said his own father doing business, and because of motivation of his workers, ended up actually paying the workers, in the year of 12 months, ended up actually giving them salary for 7 months. So with the type of incentives and the support he gave them, at the end of the day, actually the guys were receiving salary for 17 months in 12 months. And then the sense of that in the business place was just phenomenal. So yes, it is. The one thing though that I should add is that when we talk to business people about all of these, recognizing all of these principles, common good, solidarity, universal destination, all of that, when we talk to them about all of this, we hasten also to add one thing. We should not miss the point that humanity or the human race invited to do, or who does all of this, especially in the language of the Bible and religion, it's actually a fallen race. Okay, this fallen race means the effect of the original sin, and that we all need the grace of God to get up again. Therefore, what actually we think happens sometimes is that people take the normal fallen state as the way of doing it, as the normal mode of life. We say no. This is a state that requires and needs the grace of God to make you rise. So when one accepts that, then the parameters of everything begins to change. Then we people who are meant with the grace of God to rise up to a certain level and begin to function on a new level in a new plane. So this sometimes can be the tension when people say, but is this possible? Is this possible? Everything is possible for the one who is open to the grace of God. So we all need to be lifted up.
But is it fair to say, Cardinal, I mean, if I can try to put this into a soundbite, that doing the right thing is also good for the bottom line?
Sure, it's good for all us at all different levels of this, including the bottom line. The bottom line is also invited to do good, because to do good, it's not a thing limited to sainthood. It's not only saints or those who heaven who do good. And because goodness and everything starts on this earth. So the possibility of doing good is not something that reserved for people at a certain spectrum of existence, but the bottom line, we all invited ultimately to respond to the innate, the native goodness that with which we created and born with.
All right, well, so Cardinal Peter Turkson of Ghana, who is the head of the Vatican's dicastery for the promotion of integral human development, is in Washington, D.C. right now at the Catholic University of America, taking part in this landmark Good Prophets Conference, making the argument that not only is it possible for business to be virtuous, but when business is virtuous, it's good for everything, including its own bottom line. And in that sense, trying to overcome what has sometimes been perceived as an estrangement between the church, between religion, and the world of business, arguing that in fact the two belong together because they are both interested in improving the human condition. You can find full coverage of that conference on the Crux site. Conference is brought to you by Catholic University, also by the Bush School for Business and Economics and the Napa Institute. You can find coverage on the Crux site, also on the website of the Catholic University of America. Cardinal Turkson, I always feel like I wish I had 4 hours to talk to you, but I know that this has been a very long day for you. You need to rest up. But thank you infinitely for making time for us here today. And I hope perhaps when you get back to Rome and you've had some time to think about what happened at this conference, I hope perhaps we can speak again.
Sure. Thanks, and blessings on your work. Thank you.
Thank you, Cardinal. So be following the Crux site for that. We will have full coverage of this remarkable conference, which really is quite fascinating and worth a look. We hope to be bringing you more video interviews from this conference on our YouTube channel. But until we see one another again, thank you for joining us and have a fantastic day.